Okay, in this lesson we're going to talk about how to solve systems of equations using the elimination method. So in the previous videos we've learned how to solve systems of equations and come up with a solution by graphing and by substitution. The third way is by using elimination. Again, the thing to keep in mind here is that when you're looking for a solution, it's where the two lines cross, or two graphs cross, and the solution is an ordered pair, which is an x and a y value. So keep in mind, we're not done when we solve for one letter, we have to also substitute and solve for the second letter. So our directions are going to be to use the elimination method to solve the system of equations and determine the solution. So what we're looking for here is for opposite coefficients. And again, the coefficients are the numbers that are out front of the x or the y. So what we're looking for here is opposite, meaning that these two should be opposite or these two should be opposite. And the reason is because we want to add them together, and when you add two opposites, they equal 0. So we're going to eliminate them, because when you add two opposites, they equal 0. So if I look at these right here, I know I have -4 and +4. Oh, those are opposites. -2 and +8 are not opposites. But since I have two opposites here, I can just go ahead and add these together. You'll see in a minute, when we don't have opposites, we have to make opposites. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add just like you would any sort of math problem there. So -4x plus 4x is 0x, so we'll just leave that alone. -2y plus 8y gives me 6y. And you have to be careful here. -12 plus -24, that gets me -36. Now I solve this just like I would any one-step equation by dividing by 6. And my y value is -6. Now something to keep in mind here is that I've solved for the y this time. So when I write my solution down here, I have an x value and a y value. And my y value is -6. So I want to substitute now -6 up here in for my y value. Now again, it doesn't matter which equation you use, you just have to substitute -6, and be careful that you're substituting for the correct variable. So I'm going to use this one because it's positives, and I just like that better. So 4x plus 8y equals -24. And all I'm going to do is substitute -6 in for my y, because y is -6. So I'm going to leave the x alone. 4x plus 8 times -6 equals -24. Now I just solve this like I would any two-step equation. But first I have to multiply 8 times -6. So it's 4x minus, this is 8 times -6 is -48, equals -24. Two-step equation now says I need to get rid of the adding or subtracting, so I get rid of subtract 48 by adding 48. So over here I have 4x, these cancel out to be 0. -24 plus 48 is 24, and then I divide by 4 on both sides, leaving me with x equals 6. So my ordered pair is 6, -6. That's where those two graphs would cross. In my next example, again, I'm looking for opposites. So again, here I have 4 and -4. Those are my opposites. 8 and 2, +8, +2 are not opposites, so those won't cancel out. But 4 and -4 will cancel out, so I'm just going to add those together as is. 4x plus -4x is 0x. I'm not even going to write that down. 8y plus 2y is 10y. And 20 plus -30 is actually -10. Now to solve this, I divide both sides by 10. And y equals -1. Keep in mind, when I'm looking for a solution, I need an x value and a y value. And here I solve for y, so I'm going to put that in the y spot. And again, I need to substitute this back in for y. Be careful you're substituting for y. Again, you can choose either of this equations to substitute -1 into. Just make sure you're substituting for the correct letter. So I'm going to choose the top one. 4x plus 8y equals 20. And again, my y value is -1. I'm going to leave the x alone. 4x plus 8 times -1 equals 20. Now I have to do 8 times -1 first. That's -8. 4x minus 8 equals 20. Now I just have a two-step equation. I need to get rid of subtracting and adding first. So get rid of minus 8 by adding 8. Over here I have 4x, because these cancel. 20 plus 8 is 28. And my last step is to divide by 4. Leaving me with x equals 28 divided by 4 is 7. So I'm going to drop that in the x spot there. And I know that if I were to graph these two lines right here on a picture, they would cross at 7, -1. Now things are going to get a little more challenging. Now, I'm looking again for opposites. I have -2x and -4x. Those are not opposites. I have -9y and -9y. Those, they're the same number, but they're not opposites. Because if I add -9 and -9, it's -18. They don't cancel each other out. So, what we need to do, like I said earlier, is we need to make opposites. So, what can I do to make one of these the opposite of each other? Well, I could multiply, what I'd want is, since this is a -4x, I could make this into a positive 4x. Or since this is a -9y, I can make this into a positive 9y. Now the easiest thing to do, since to make a negative into a positive, all I have to do is multiply by -1. So if I multiply this entire thing by -1, I'm going to multiply each item by -1. So I have to do -1 times -4x, that's positive 4x. I have -1 times -9y, that's 9y. And I have -1 all the way over here times -23. That equals positive 23. Now if you notice, I'd have this equation right here, along with my original equation, which I'll rewrite here. -2x minus 9y equals -25. Now if you look what we did here, we made opposites, 9y and -9y. Now I can just add them together, because these two are going to cancel. So 4x minus 2x is 2x. 9y minus 9y cancel each other out, there's 0y. And 23 minus 25, or 23 plus -25, is -2. So then I divide both sides by 2, and x equals -1. Now if you notice in the last ones we solved for y first, this time we solved for x first. So you have to make sure again that you're putting these in the correct spot in our ordered pair. So since x is -1, I'm going to drop it in the x slot. Now I actually have 3 equations I can choose from. I can choose from my top original equation, number 1. I can choose from this equation right here, number 2, before I multiply by -1. Or I can choose from the third one when I multiply by -1. And me personally, I like the third one because it's positive, positive, positive. So I'm going to substitute -1 into this equation right here. 4x plus 9y equals 23. And again, I'm substituting -1 for x this time because x was -1. So we're going to leave the y alone for now. 4 times -1 plus 9 times y equals 23. Just like I did on the last one, I have to multiply 4 times -1, that's -4, plus 9y equals 23. Again, the next step is to get rid of adding or subtracting. I get rid of -4 by adding 4. -4 plus 4 is a 0 pair, leaving me with 9y here. 23 plus 4 is 27. Now to solve for y, I just divide by 9, and y equals 3. And again, if I were to graph these two lines on a coordinate plane, they would cross at the point -1, 3. And our last example is a little more complicated. I have -7x plus y equals -19, and -2x plus 3y equals -19. So either I need to find a common multiple of 2 and 7, and they need to cancel out, They're both negative right now. One would need to be negative, one would have to be positive. Or I have to make this 3 and this 1 cancel out. Well, I'm thinking the easiest thing to do, since I have a positive 3 here, is I could make this into a negative 3. And since this is a sneaky 1, I gotta think, what do I multiply 1 by to make this into a negative 3? So if I multiply this entire equation up here by negative 3, when I multiply this over here, negative 3 times 1 is going to be negative 3, which will cancel out with that one. But again, I have to multiply negative 3 times each of these. So negative 3 times negative 7x is 21x. Negative 3 times 1y is negative 3y. And then I have to multiply negative 3 all the way over here times negative 19. That's going to give me positive 57. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite these equations here. I have negative 2x plus 3y equals negative 19. That's this equation right here. And then I have 21x minus 3y equals 57. Alright, now if you notice, the 3y and the minus 3y are going to cancel out, so I can just add. I have negative 2x plus 21x, that's positive 19x. 3y minus 3y is a 0 pair, those are 0. And then I have negative 19 plus 57, and that's going to get me 38. To solve for this, I divide by 19, and x equals 2. Now again, like our last one, we solved for x first, so I have to put it in my x spot of the coordinate point. So x equals 2, I put it in the x coordinate spot. And now when I substitute back in, I'm going to substitute for x, not y. So I think I'm just going to use this one right here, this 21x minus 3y one. So let's use that one. 21x minus 3y equals 57. Alright, so again, I'm substituting 2 in here for my x. 21 times 2 minus 3 times y equals 57. Again, I multiply 21 times 2, that's 42, minus 3y equals 57. Now I have to multiply 42 from both sides, or sorry, subtract 42 from both sides. 42 minus 42 is a 0 pair, but you have to be careful, this is negative 3y. Equals 57 minus 42 gets me 15. And if I divide both sides by negative 3, my y value is negative 5. So again, if I were to graph these two lines on a coordinate plane, they would be two pictures of two lines, and they would cross or intersect at the point 2, negative 5.